In that entire 7 hours, about the terrain, about the mountains, about the forest, Schwarzwald, about Würzburg and Schoenfeld and all the rest, in that 7-hour movie for combat troops, there was 15 seconds devoted to concentration camps. And that 15-second interval that we saw alluded to Dachau as where they put the communists and the gays and those Jews that were both communist and gay. I said, how come 15 seconds and only mention concentration camps and only peripherally? They didn't include what I just alluded to about gays and about Jews. Just said there were concentration camps for criminals. Well, we were in combat during this period, and the combat was heavy and severe in southern Germany at that point, but they were retreating and we were advancing. And at that time, we were going into March of 1945 and into April. And in April 29th, 1945, we stumbled upon a series of sub-camps and a camp called Dachau. Dachau. Jesse, you know what Dachau is? Mike Foxhole made. He said, we're approaching it now. And look at the skeletons. He was pointing to human beings walking, running, falling, 60, 70, 80-pound human beings, men and women in pajamas-like uniforms. He said, they're running from the camp. They've been in the camp, Cal. I said, well, then we'll get there very soon. We got to a railroad section where there were railway cars. And around the railroad cars were, I'm sorry, you're eating, were mountains of corpses. And in the railway cars were larger mountains of corpses, men, women, and children, being brought to Dachau. Not one railway car, railway wagon, not two. How about 3 dozen, at least? I didn't count them, but I was shocked as to what was in them. And I said, Jesse, what you told me, which I didn't believe, which I thought you were making up, it's true. And the corpses were all around the camp, in all sections of it, in front of it, and it was a sight that the normal human mind cannot comprehend, and it was a sight that I wanted to forget. I wanted to forget. And Jesse said to me, you wouldn't believe me, would you, Cal? Well, this is what we're facing. This is the enemy. I said, and he said we should go about trying to kill some of these people. I said, I'm not killing any civilians, Jesse. I'm not killing civilians. He said, I didn't say civilians. I said SS and German troops. And what I saw there troubled me so. And I remember I became even more troubled when those that were alive came and wanted to kiss my hand and wanted to kiss my shoulder, and they wanted to hug me. And I said, Jesse, let's give them some food. They look at this 60, 70, 80-pound people. A woman, 5'5", 65 pounds. A man, 5'10", 75 pounds. I said, let's give them some food. We got extra food here. The officer in my company said, no food. You'll kill them with food. And he was right, because I learned afterwards that those that did get fed died from eating the food that they were given, because they were in no condition, in their dastardly state, they were in no condition to eat anything. They had to take weeks or months. The Jewish chaplain in the 7th Army who came there, I remember saying, I can't talk about this. Now, here's a Jewish chaplain who can't talk about this. Is it any wonder that I wouldn't talk about this? But it's part of my history now, and now I think it's important that I do talk about it, because if we don't remember the past, we might forget what can happen in the future or not believe what can happen in the present. And so in 2003, I spoke at the synagogue. I hope I didn't repeat myself, but I know I must have because I didn't read my prepared address. You'll forgive me. And I began to speak at schools because I've been invited to, and my language is different in a schoolroom than it is here because I want to be a little more circumspect with younger people. But because I spoke in Lincoln Junior High School not too long ago, and to my utter amazement, the children in that auditorium at Lincoln Junior High in Skokie, maybe 25% Jewish, 75% not Jewish, Protestant, Catholic, Asian, runs the gamut of people. Every one of those students had read Elie Wiesel's Night. I go to places where adults have never read Elie Wiesel's Night and don't know who Elie Wiesel is. I go to places who can't and speak with adult groups who never even heard of Dachau. They have not heard of Dachau. And maybe they've heard of other camps. They've heard of Auschwitz or Birkenau. But Dachau, for historical purposes, was the first concentration camp created by the Nazis in 1933. And it was the model for all the other camps. And in that camp, which was supposed to be a work camp, it had a crematorium where they burned corpses, and it had barracks and experimental stations where they tortured human beings theoretically to determine how much pain the human being can take for scientific purposes. That was Dachau. Now I can tell you that what I felt must have been felt by others, because I remember very specifically, April 12, 1945, we were in combat in Würzburg, which is 2 weeks before we got to Dachau. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt died that day, because that's what they told us. And just about that day, to the north of us in Germany, they freed the concentration camp Bergen-Belsen and the concentration camp Buchenwald. And General Eisenhower, who went to see Bergen-Belsen, got physically sick seeing what he saw in Bergen-Belsen. And General George Patton, that strong, indomitable human being, saw what he saw in Buchenwald and started vomiting. So I don't like to talk about that when you're eating. And I don't like to talk about that to youngsters. But I do like to talk about that they should know that the world, human beings, have done awful things to other human beings. And that the great century, the 20th century, cannot be overlooked as being also one of the worst centuries, 20th centuries. And I speak to you, I would like to give you my prepared address as well, but I speak to you about it even hesitatingly today, but I know very well that German ambassador did the right thing on April 19th of this year when he acknowledged the historic devastation to the 20th century caused by Nazi Germany. And now in this village where you're now sitting is a Holocaust Memorial Foundation building brought here by the people who are willing to contribute so that the Middle West will not forget. There is one in Washington, I understand. It's great. I was there. There's one in New York. There's one in LA. Now there's one in Skokie. And Skokie's got this one, in many ways, will bring people together to see that we all ought to remember. Because if we don't remember, we take the risk of forgetting. And if we forget, we take the further risk of seeing mankind deteriorate even more. And thank you very much for giving me your time.